But if you think things are strange and mysterious with this book, just wait till I get into the next book. Right now, which is Ghost Circles. In this book, the Bones, Grandma Ben, Thorn, and their loyal rat creature cub venture on a journey through the mysterious Ghost Circles to Athea, the old city of the royal family. However, they must be careful around the circles, for one wrong step could change the valley's fate forever. Now this is the point in the series where it gets more surreal. As the book explains what Ghost Circles are, this is where a lot of dark creative imagination kicks in. This is also where Thorn starts to get into a dark turn, and the execution of it is really powerful and effective, and you really feel for her. Not to mention, Bartleby comes back, and not only has he grown more, but he actually gives a bit of development of the rat creatures, and he does give a bit more depth for his species. Not to mention, half of the Lord of the Locusts was resurrected, and what it left in the valley was nothing but pure damage, which really changes the pacing and tone of the book series. This is also where the Bone Cousins start to hit it off well with more conversations about Boneville and the valley and stuff, and it really feels genuine. I swear, I always feel sorry for these guys. It's also really nice to see the Bone Cousins, Thorn, Rose, and even Bartleby make it out through thick and thin, and at the end they finally reach to their goal, proving that even through dark times, if you make it out with a friend or any companion, you might make it out through thick and thin, and you'll feel so much better. Also, while stepping in a ghost circle, Thorn is told to seek the Crown of Horns. This is to help save the valley and get this piece of locust that is stuck inside Thorn out and away from her. Overall, this is another recommendation for its dark atmosphere, surrealism, unexpected twists, and good old development. But now it's time to continue in Athea with the next book, Treasure Hunters. Now that the Bone Cousins, Grandma Ben, and Thorn have reached the city of Athea, they prepare to battle the Lord of the Locusts there. Meanwhile, Thorn's visions are becoming more threatening and Phonybone is convinced the city is rich in gold, and he's determined to find it. Now if you thought the last book had several surreal moments I mentioned, it does, but this does come at a close second. In this book, the Ghost Circles have unleashed several creatures, and although they're not really shown that much, you can definitely feel their presence. These range from funny caricatures, giant bees, creatures from the Craw, even dragon worshippers. This is where Rose seeks aid to help save Thorn and the cousins, as well as save the valley from the Hooded One and the Lord of the Locusts. I really like Thorn in this book. I kinda liked her more in Ghost Circles since she developed more and was starting to get more dark and developed, but that continues here. She really develops and has certain swings that she goes on in this book. More and more she becomes three-dimensional, and there's even some exposition given of her past and the kingdom's past as well. But if there was one moment where I consider to be the most heartbreaking, it was every moment with Smiley and Bartleby. It's obvious they belong in two different worlds, so it's all the more heartbreaking to see that they have to leave each other. The cousins aren't even sure if they can bring the guy along with them when they go back to Boneville, if they do at this point. I also really feel sorry for Phonebone in this book. He really sticks by Thorn's side through thick and thin, but at the same time you wonder, is this guy ever gonna make it out okay? Especially with his cousins. But the exposition and the preparing for the war is probably the most strong part in the whole book. While Rose really hasn't thought of a plan per se, she still is determined to help save her kingdom and the world from total destruction. This is also the point where Phony's scheme really starts to affect both him, Smiley, and even if there are chances of going back to Boneville. This book has it all. Drama, exposition, and some humor and action thrown in as well. The perfect combination for the series, which is why I recommend the second to last book to read. It definitely is one big treasure hunt, and not just about treasure. Alright, we made it. The final book in the entire series. The epic conclusion. The finale. The showstopper. The book that concludes this whole saga. That book is The Crown of Horns. It's full-fledged war as Briar, the rat creatures, and the Pawen army storm the city of Athea where the Bones, Thorn, and Grandma Ben are up in arms to defend the royal city. When Thorn hears a voice urging her to seek the Crown of Horns, Thorn and Phonebone embark on another dangerous journey as they race to find the one thing that may save them all. Right off the bat, this book explains the story of Mim, the dragon queen who went mad when was possessed by the Lord of the Locusts and caused chaos in the valley, which the dragons helped calm her by turning to stone. That is exactly why she has been brought up by the Hooded One to destroy the world. Now, how does this novel play out? Well, during the battle, Fonebone has to deal with helping Thorn find the Crown of Thorns, as well as confronting his cousins on whether he should go back to Boneville or not. It's one of those cases where you're just not sure what to do. On one hand, this sounds good, but on the other hand, the other one sounds much better. He really drives an emotional depth through this book, and it really makes you feel sad. But it doesn't matter what decision he makes, for the guy is just all the more caring and lovable. This is also when Thorn starts to get rebellious. This is when she really seeks out to find the Crown of Thorns, but goes through several obstacles like the army and King Doc at his absolute worst. If that's not enough, this is when Phony really wants to get out of the valley and go to Boneville, but he has to tangle between whatever money he has left and his cousins, which he can't abandon both. And if that's not enough, the Hooded One, who happens to be Rose's sister, faces her off, and then, with all these obstacles going around, Thorn and Fonebone win, the Hooded One loses, and the War of the Locusts is diminished with the Queen of Dragons, with the valley restored and the cousins reunited with the rest of the group. Oh yeah, and unfortunately Lucius gets the axe. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But the restoration is all the more heartfelt when we see Thorn and her grandmother be reunited in the kingdom, and to have the cousins be reunited back at Barrelhaven, as well as giving one of their loved ones a proper burial. This honestly has to be the most heartbreaking yet heartfelt book in the entire series, as it deals with not only the restoration of the valley and Thorn and her grandma living a normal life once again, but the point where the Bone Cousins have to leave and Fonebone has to say goodbye. Even though he made the right decision to go back with his family, it still doesn't change the fact that he's gonna say goodbye to old friends. Well, a few, but friends nonetheless. But despite the fact that they are departing ways, they give off a very meaningful farewell. And, as a token of appreciation, Fonebone is given a shrine to honor his brave courage to help save the valley. And even though at the end his cousins embark on their journey home, it hints that maybe we'll see these cousins again someday. So that was the Bone series. I still didn't go into a lot of detail with the books, but they're so dang good that it's best to read them solely to believe them. But I will give my overall thoughts. Overall, this has to be one of the most well-written, action-packed, dark, comedic, deep, emotional, effective, overlooked book series I've ever read in my life, and that really is saying something. There is a really good reason why I love these books today just as much as I did back then. The characters. Not only do these characters make the heart and soul of this comic series work, but they also drive a very humorous, emotional, and just outright charming sense of wow along the journey. Fonebone is my favorite character in the whole series. He may have a little bit of a grudge with his cousins some of the time, but he still really cares about them. And although he can be relatively timid, he does have courage, and he really sticks by Thorn thick and thin, which really makes him a great hero, as well as saving the valley and his cousins. Plus, he is the voice of reason throughout the series, which does contrast well with the two different sides of his cousins. It also plays for some good comedy, especially during his confrontations with the two stupid rat creatures. Fonebone I've always been mixed on. While he does show some sympathy for his cousins, and he does give off some good comedy once in a while just due to his reactions and the stuff that happens to him, like I said, the stuff that happens to him is because he's such a greedy schmo who almost never learns his lesson. Even when things don't go the way they do, he still doesn't learn his lesson. Although he doesn't always act greedy, and even when he is grumpy, it is kinda cute. So consider him a good example of a character with good pros and bad cons. Smiley-Bone, on the other hand, I love this guy. He's one of those characters who's kinda dumb, but not so dumb to where he's annoying, more enjoyably dumb and goofy and charming. He certainly is a guy who never lost his childlike innocence, which makes him all the more lovable. It's also great how he not only cares about his cousins, but he cares about other animals, including a baby rat creature that no one else would have ever liked. Smiley-Bone. He may be goofy and kind of ignorant, but he sure is one lovable bone. Thorn is really three-dimensional, and I mean really three-dimensional in this series. She starts off as a typical farm girl, But as the series goes on and Fumpo learns more and more about her past, she begins to realize more and more that she's really something else. As she learns more of her real identity, she struggles a lot. But hey, I'm sure we'll struggle a lot when we learn that we're really a princess from a lost kingdom and not really a farm girl. Especially one who remembers dragons as a little girl. It's also great how she and Fumpo don't exactly become lovers, just more friends that have a nice relationship. That's what it should be with a boy and girl sometimes. And I love it. But what I love about Thorn the most is how she slowly decides on whose side to pick. Should she pick the ones she trusts or should she go alone? But in the end, she realizes that the only person to trust is the one she's trusted longest. What a great moral. And then there's Grandma Rose Ben. She's got to be one of the more complicated characters in the series due to her backstory. Being the sister of one of the main villains in the series, it's really hard for her to keep her secret since she starts off just a simple average old lady, but as the series goes on and Fumpo discovers more and more of the valley and the secrets, she begins to reveal her true identity, and it really is shocking and unpredictable, especially when it turns out that she's part of a kingdom. In other words, she may be a sweet old lady on the outside, but on the inside, she's got one hell of a dark secret and past. And unfortunately, she had to reveal it. But even if revealing it did lead to a lot of problems regarding her granddaughter, it did make things all the more better to just get them out of the way. Now I'd talk about more of the characters, but I don't want this to drag on too long, so let's get down to the final arcs. It's interesting to note that Jeff Smith actually drew these characters as far back as when he was a little kid. Although a big influence was Scrooge McDuck creator Carl Banks, another big influence was J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, as well as War and Peace and the Odyssey. In fact, to quote Smith himself, "The kinds of stories I'm drawn to, like Huckleberry Finn, are the ones that start off very simple, almost like children's stories. But as it goes on, it gets a little darker, and the themes become a little more sophisticated and more complex. And those are really the kinds of stories that just get me going." It's also interesting to know that while Smith attended The Ohio State University, he created a comic strip called Thorn for the student newspaper The Lantern, which included some of the characters that ended up in Bone. Heck, during college, Jeff and his friends even produced some animation, but then Smith thought, this isn't what I like to do for my cartooning style. It wasn't until he was drawn to the idea that he could produce his own animated type story in the comics medium, and he was convinced by the works of Frank Miller and Art Spiegelman. It wasn't until 1991 when Smith launched his company Cartoon Books to publish his series, which were originally self-published, and he managed to slip by this series from 1995 to 2004, with the series being recolored from 2005 to 2009. It also spawned some other little installments in the franchise, like a prequel called Rose, another prequel called Stupid Stupid Rat Tales, a follow-up called Bone Tall Tales with Smiley and Bartleby, and Bone Legacy, more adventures with the Bone Cousins, with a holiday special handbook and 10th anniversary book thrown in. Classy. So overall, these books are all great, worth watching books filled with great drama, comedy, action, characters, artistry, and best of all, heart and suspense. And so, as a reviewer and fan of the series, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Pick up these books whenever you can and have a great time. And with all that said, my work here is done.